I think my role as a leader, as the artistic director, but the founder of my organization that's been now going into 5 decades. It's sort of kind of weird to think about, like I'm feeling really old. But I pray for wisdom, I really do. I think about how can I make the wisest decision about something? It's not always the right or wrong decision, but the wisest one. And I think that my leadership skills have been really about creating an ensemble around me. People that I kind of trust to say, this is the situation, what do you think is going on here, or what should I do? I don't think I make many decisions alone. I don't think I make them alone. Everybody thinks I make them. And sometimes when someone thinks somebody else makes them, I go, no, I made that decision. But I didn't make it without the kind of input that I think I need to assess it. And in this kind of time, going from the 60s, being brought up in the dance world in the 60s, then starting in the 70s, and having now 5 different decades that I'm working through, it has changed a lot. But I think I have tried to stay true to one spirit, many voices, hearing that we have to be on one page. That's a spiritual page. That's a place for passion and compassion. We have to be compassionate because we're not out there making computers and we don't care about what people think. We've got to do the bottom line. We do have a more bottom line right now, though, than we've ever had. And I think that sort of shifts how we lead. We don't have the kind of time to assess. We don't have the kind of resources that we had. We don't have the same ones. We have different ones, and we have to learn those new resources. So I think a learning, growing process all the time. I empower my dancers to think and know as much as they can know. And sometimes they go, I just want to dance. And I go, no, you don't. No, you don't. You want to know more than that, because we're educators and we're activists. And so you have to know what's going on, and you have to sort of, we have to reflect what's going on in society, and then we have to be honest about it. And that's not always easy, because you're wondering if it'll affect your funding, if it'll affect your support, if it'll affect your relationships, even within the company, because not everybody comes with the same experience or perspective. So it's an extraordinary dynamic process, and I think I must thrive on it, because it's painful sometimes, very painful. I was very fortunate to have a father and mother that really lifted me up. And we do this thing called the round table. Growing up, I was the oldest, so the round table was really important, that we'd come together around the table, and we'd have to share what we were thinking. And we had to have that kind of, Cleo, you're the oldest, however we want to hear from the youngest. And so it brought that sense of community to me. And so I think everything's an ensemble. And even though you might have somebody there who's the real soloist, you have to hear from the one who has a very small part. So what drives me is not necessarily dance. What drives me, I think, is dance is a tool. It's a tool. And so connecting with others who are of like minds has really been wonderful. So it hasn't always been choreographers. It can be somebody on the street, a homeless person, where I go, wow. I remember when I was chosen, finally approved by the Senate and Senator Kennedy to serve in Washington on the National Council. And there were a couple of things that took place with that, but a homeless person on the street came up to me as I was getting my car, and they said, congratulations. I'm like, and for what? Thank you? He said, because the president just chose you to serve in Washington. And I'm like, homeless people don't read. Isn't that interesting that we would think that they don't have intelligence, that they're not in tune to what's going on? that's an amazing shift to think about how we think about others. So I was just shocked. I went, people that I see every day aren't even aware of what's going on. Are you kidding? So it was really a powerful moment. I remember it took 5 years for them to approve me. And it was so painful in that process of the scrutiny that my mother said, honey, I don't think it's worth it. Whatever it is that you may need to do to be approved to be at the National Endowment, I don't think it's worth it. Because it almost became interrogations. One day in I'm in 5 Points, I'm in a historic district, we call it the Harlem of the West. The 5 Points, Rawsonia is where I was born, in this club that became the only black hotel that only blacks, as they came to Denver, Duke Ellington and Calloway and Bessie Smith and Billie Holiday and Sarah Vaughan, and they were all there, along with Pete Seeger, along with Paul Robeson. These are the ones that came through and sang in a very elegant hotel, and I lived above the casino. And since it was the only black hotel, my mother was not allowed to be there, but my mother is married to my father. They had to go to 5 states to get married. So when I know that love is so deep that you will deal with whatever the obstacles are, I understand what that is to be devoted and to love. So my leadership comes from that kind of devotion, and I think that that's a blessing.